The Vizu Clam Grill can only be serviced by qualified service personnel. Please download the fault finding guide using the link in the description below. Caution: the clam grill uses 415 volts 3-phase electricity. Risk of electric shock.
If the machine fails to start, first of all look and see that you've got the 3 indicator lights illuminated. Check also that if they're all out, that the isolation switch on the wall is on. We've turned it on and the machine still hasn't started. You must now check exterior to the machine, which would be the main distribution board. Check at the main distribution board that the supply hasn't tripped. In this case it has.
Excessively long cable runs or underrated cables can result in voltage drop at the machine. With the machine running, check that a minimum of 220 volts is present per phase at the clam grill. Anything below this can cause the grill to malfunction. If the voltage is below 220 volts at the machine, check the voltage of the incoming supply at the meter. If the voltage at the incoming supply is correct and the voltage at the machine is low, then upgrade the cable installation to the machine.
If the problem still exists, as a check, press the start button, hold for 10 seconds and the display should come up. But on releasing it, if it goes out, then check the high limit stat at the back of the machine. Reset the high limit stat that is at the back of the machine. It can be reached with a screwdriver. You press the screwdriver, press it in, go to the front and see if the machine starts. If the machine starts, continue to start the machine and use it. If the high limit failed to reset, then replace the high limit stat. Before replacing the high limit stat, check the wiring to it and also check for continuity, as it could be a damaged wire or an open circuit. If the high limit stat didn't need resetting, then check the 3 fuses. Number 1 fuse is a 220 to 240 volt 10 amp fuse. Check and replace if necessary. That's okay. Number 2 is a 24 volt AC 1.25 amp, which is from the anti-surge here. It's the output of the anti-surge. If that checks okay, check number 3. Number 3 is a 220 240 volt 1.25 amp fuse that supplies the anti-surge. It's checking okay. If faulty, replace the fuses. After checking fuses and you try to restart the machine and it fails, then check the anti-surge input. The anti-surge input is 220 to 240 volts AC. Set your meter accordingly and check your line and neutral in. If the reading is correct, then go to the other end, but go to DC. Go to DC on your voltmeter and check the outgoing. If the outgoing voltage is less than 24 volts DC, use the voltage adjuster to bring the voltage to a maximum of 24 volt DC. If the outgoing is faulty, replace the anti-surge. If the checks on the anti-surge were okay, the input was okay and the output was okay, then replace the control panel. If machine fails to start and A contactor, which is this, does not engage, usually an audible clack is heard, If it doesn't engage, then check the voltages on the transformer. The input voltages are 220 to 230 volts. And if that checks OK, check the output, which is the two extremes on the bottom, and that should read 24 to 30 volts. They're both AC. If the bottom doesn't read, replace the transformer. If the transformer checks out OK and doesn't require replacing, a quick check is to use an insulated screwdriver and press a contactor in, and if it latches, continue with the checks. If the contactor doesn't latch, replace the contactor. If the machine is showing top or bottom high, remove the 9-pin plug and test on pins 1 and 2 for the top. It should read 1000 ohms plus or minus 60 ohms. This is due to ambient temperature, the variation. And to check the bottom, check pins 3 and 6, and that should read 1000 ohms plus or minus. If they're correct, then proceed with the rest of the checks. If top is high, check that the relay 2, which has a very small light that you can't see on camera, but from directly above there's a green light that indicates whether the relay is activating or not. At the moment, both relays are deactivated while the machine pulses. Wait until it comes on again. If the lights are on, check the voltage to make sure that the relay is activating. If the relay activates, number 2 activates the top contactor, which is the B contactor. When that light comes on, that should work in unison with that relay. If the contactor doesn't open, or close, I should say, if it doesn't close, which is just done, that's the number 2 relay is alight, the contactor is closed, it is working correctly. The coil on both are okay. You do the same procedure for number 3 and C contactor. To check the relays, go on to the lower screws that are all bridged together. The top one, the middle one at the top, is the coil for that relay. Unfortunately it pulses, so you have to wait for the pulse to come back on, and when the pulse comes on, check that you're getting the correct voltage to there. If the voltage doesn't exist, it'll be a fault from the board or a fault from the high limit. It's on, it's showing 20 volts, and at the same time as that goes on, over here the contactor will pull in at the same time as the relay pulls in. You do the same checks on relay 3 and contactor C. Wait for the light to light, make sure that is in unison with that, and if it is, the coils are both good on both. If the voltage is correct at the terminals and the light is lighting and the contactor is not working, check the relay coil. If the relay coil is okay, then check the contactor coil. If faulty, replace either. When checking for top high, put your probe in the lower screws of the relay. They are bridged together, so they work on all 3 relays. For top high, check relay 2 that's in the middle. On relay 2, you should have a reading between 20 and 24 volts. While you're there, check relay 3, which is bottom, high or low. Wait for the green light to come on the relay so that you know that the current is there to check that it's correct. When that relay is up working as it is now, the green light will light and the contactor appropriate to it will pull in. That means both coils are working on the relay and the contactor. And it applies to the top and the bottom the same. Now, as you've just heard, the bottom contactor has gone in and the bottom relay was alight. So we know that the coils are working on both of those. The next check is to check whether the actual contactor is working from one side to the other as regards voltage flowing through it. It could have burnt contacts. If it has, replace it. And going back to the beginning, if the relay is not showing voltage, replace it. If the contactor is not pulling in, replace it. With relay and contactor opening and closing, check the contactor for continuity. If the control board is sending a continual current and the relay is actuating and the contactor is actuating and this goes on, replace the control board. If the low message is shown, check the relays and the contactors as shown previously. The difference being that if there is no voltage to the relay, this replace the control board. If there is a message from the control board and the relay is activated, check that it's activating the voltage on the coil of the contactor. If the contactor is not receiving any voltage, replace the relay. If the relay is sending voltage to the contactor and the contactor is not activating, replace the contactor. Yeah. With the contactor running, check that there is voltage in and out of the contactor on all three phases. If there is voltage in and out, then check connections to the elements. If the voltage is at the elements and the elements are cold, replace the elements.